What's going on, everybody? It's Alec here. This is the second episode of the Smashing Brands podcast, filming in person this year. And today I am joined by a very special guest, David Shay.
How's it going, Alec?
Everything is awesome. And I'm excited to have you here. And I'm ready to kick off the conversation. And the first question I always like to ask everybody is, David, how do you spend your time on planet Earth?
Ooh, that's a loaded question, man. How do I spend my time on planet Earth?
Are you wearing the microphone, by the way?
Yeah, right here.
Oh, you want it on the outside, I think, because it can become kind of muffled.
Oh, I'm wearing a weird shirt.
I'll make sure it's not all muffled.
Yeah, no problem. Let's try that.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah, how do I spend my time on planet Earth? That's a good question. I spend my time on planet Earth trying not to be bored. Mm-hmm. I like to move. I don't like to sit around.
You like to move a lot.
I really do.
You like to break down your body, move.
Yeah. Yeah.
You like to break down houses. You like to break down your muscles. You like to break down a lot of things.
Yeah. Hopefully not relationships. But no, I mean, I guess you could call me somewhat of a serial hobbyist.
Yeah.
If you will. And then my mentality is like, if you're going to do something, go 100% into it. Mm-hmm. So it's like when I used to be fat.
Yeah.
And one day I just kind of hit this critical point. Mm-hmm. And I was like, nope, things got to change.
Yeah.
And so I identified a goal. What's my goal? I'm going to become a professional male model. That's my goal.
Was that your goal?
Yeah. Well, I figure if somebody's willing to take a photo of me with my shirt off and give me money for it,
yeah,
you got to be in pretty good shape for that.
Yeah. So when were you fat?
About maybe 3 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago, I just started this thing.
Okay. So how much did you weigh at that time?
I weighed 215.
You weighed 215.
And I was about 32% body fat.
And how tall are you?
5'10".
So 5'10", 215, that's pretty big. Mm-hmm. Unless you're like all muscle, which you weren't, which is you have to be like on roids and stuff to even be super jacked, being 5'10", 215.
Yeah, you'd be pretty damn big.
So what are you now?
Right now, I'm prepping for a bodybuilding comp.
Yeah.
So I'm at about 7% body fat, and I weigh 176 pounds as of this morning.
Yeah, so you lost about 40 pounds.
Yep. Not on Jenny Craig.
On what?
On a lot of picking up heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And more so self-control with my diet.
So what was like the motivation behind this whole thing? Because you got the bodybuilding show, right? Which is actually happening, is it next week?
Yeah, it's happening this coming Saturday, the 23rd in Vegas.
Yeah, so what was your inspiration behind wanting to do a bodybuilding show? Because it's one thing to say like, hey, I want to lose, let's say 30, 40 pounds. But like being a bodybuilding show, like you got to look like pretty dang good. Like it's a whole nother game of like shreddedness.
Yeah.
So like, what was your motivation around that? And how does that relate to the whole male model thing?
You know, it doesn't really directly, I'd say it indirectly relates to that overall goal.
Yeah.
And goals shift. I'm still saying that is my overall goal just because I think it'd be kind of cool for my kids to say, this is my dad. He's a professional male model.
Yeah.
Like, it's not something I actually want to do for money. I could really care less about the money. It's just my mind is, if you're a professional at something, it means that somebody's giving you money for it.
Yeah.
Right? So that's all that means.
Right.
But to answer your question, with a bodybuilding comp, it really just has, you got to have, whatever your goal is, if you need to have a story behind it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if you've ever read the book Story Brand, or there's another really good book by Don Miller. I think it's called like a Million Miles and 1,000 Something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great book. And what he talks about is to live your life as if it was a movie that somebody would want to watch.
Yeah.
And so what I did is I have adopted that, and within any good story, there's a hero, and he's at a certain point and he wants something, and he goes through the hero's journey.
Of course.
And he is chasing after this goal, this thing that he wants. There's the climax of the story, he achieves it, and then the story ends, right? And so I've adopted that within my goals.
Yeah.
And I've placed a story in there.
Yeah.
A story that has consequences.
Yeah.
You know, that I've set this, I've paid money for it, I've made it public, I've put it on social media saying I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know about for anybody else, but for myself, having that social accountability related to a specific time-bound, actionable, measurable goal, the SMART goals, saying this is going to happen, it forces me in the times I don't feel like it, the times that I didn't get enough sleep, the times whatever. I get in a fight with my wife and I just don't. I want to go binge eat or emotionally eat and eat pizza or skip a workout.
Yeah.
It's what holds me accountable to being driven towards that story.
That's interesting. You're talking about, hey, well, you used to binge eat as an escape mechanism.
Oh yeah, I'm a hardcore emotional eater.
Yeah, I feel like that's something. I mean, you couldn't tell based on looking at me, but like I've binge eaten a lot, and I feel like that's one of those things. I also work out and I exercise, so like I don't see at least the short-term impacts of it. But it's like, okay, you're in a bodybuilding competition, like it's like you literally can't eat that stuff, at least consistently. So like in those times when you felt like eating and you couldn't because you're prepping for a bodybuilding show, you know, like, how do you manage your emotions?
What's worked for me currently has been to actually give myself permission to do it, but to acknowledge the consequences of it.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm a rebellious person by nature, and when I'm told no, I mean, I own a cybersecurity company, and the reason I got into it and the reason I thrive on it is because the job of a hacker is to literally be told no, access denied, and then to say, well, what about this?
Yeah.
And what about this? And what about this? And they work their way around the problem. That's really what all hacking is. And that's how I was brought up in computers and stuff. And so that's just my nature as a whole, is just to be a rebellious person. So when I'm told no, my mind immediately says, well, what about this? And what about this? And what about this?
Yeah.
And so I've had to approach it differently and be like, okay, Dave, you could eat that cheesecake. Or actually, that's not really relevant. I've been giving my daughter gummy bears to reward her for going to the bathroom. We're potty training her.
Yeah.
You know, she's like 3 years old. And so she's like, Daddy, time for my gummy bears. She's super cute.
Yeah.
Give her gummy bears the rest of her life. And so, is it receiving?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, we're good?
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah. So when it comes to the gummy bears, I might be tempted to eat one, especially if maybe I've had a hard day at work, or I just justify it, and I'll go through that. What about this? You know, it's like, you worked out harder, or you've hit your steps, or you got some extra room in your calories. But gold medalists standing up on stage, they're not eating gummy bears. They're not taking those little fringe calories in. You really got to be that hyper specific.
Yeah.
So I say, you know what, David, you could eat that gummy bear. Eat it, man. You're a grown ass man. You could have 10 gummy bears. Eat the entire damn thing.
Yeah.
But you can't get that gold medal on stage. You can't even look good on stage. You're still going to go up on stage, but you're not going to look good.
Yeah.
So you got to make your choice. Do you want that gummy bear, or do you want to look on the stage? You got to pick. You're a big boy. Which one do you want? And that's literally the story that I'm playing in my head every time I'm tempted on something.
Yeah.
And it sucks, but it works.
Yeah. So how has that impacted your business? Like, is there any correlation between the discipline that you've had as a training for a bodybuilding show and what you've been able to do in business?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you've probably heard the phrase, a rising tide lifts all ships.
Yeah.
Right? So outside of the obvious things, when you're healthy, when the shell that you're inside of is at its most optimal state, naturally you're going to have more mental clarity. You're going to have more energy. Sales is easier. When you walk into a room, you have a different energy.
Is it just the confidence?
I think so. I mean, there's definitely a confidence. When you wake up let me back up a little bit further. When I was fat and I woke up in the morning, the worst part of my day, Alec, was waking up and turning on the lights and seeing somebody that I didn't approve of.
Yeah.
Not fat shaming. I'm fat shaming myself.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that I wasn't being disciplined. I wasn't taking care of my body. I wasn't loving myself.
Yeah.
And I was being reactive to the environment and the situations around me. I was emotionally eating. I wasn't training. I wasn't being proactive with my health and taking care of myself. And I was literally physically wearing the results of my decisions. And I was disappointed in myself.
Yeah.
I wasn't meant to look like that. And so to wake up with that being your energy, as the very first thing you do every single day, I literally would turn on the lights and I'd brush my teeth and look away from the mirror so I didn't have to experience.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not kidding. And so it was weird because when I started training, it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen in the first 2 months. It didn't happen in the first 6 months. But around like month 8, all of a sudden, I look in the mirror and I see a different human being.
Yeah.
And it was like, you ever seen the older Spider-Mans with Tobey Maguire, I think his name is? That's the first one. He gets bit by the spider and he wakes up the next morning and he's jacked. And he's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And he's just, that's what I was experiencing, like this weird body dysmorphia. And so for the following 6 months, I'd wake up and I'd look in the mirror, or I'd be afraid to look in the mirror and I'd be like, I don't
They were
wanna.
just used to it for years.
Yeah, you know, when you're like that for your entire life and then it changes, or it feels like it changes in a heartbeat.
Yeah, it's interesting. Never experienced that.
It's the weirdest and most satisfying thing.
3, 4, 5 months in, you was probably looking a lot better, but you were just so used to not looking at yourself.
No, exactly. But you turn on the mirror or on the lights and avert your eyes from, it's like, I'd still avert my eyes. I don't want to look at myself, brushing my teeth. And I look in the mirror, I'm like, who is that in the mirror?
Yeah.
And it's, you know, I'm like flexing. I'm like, what the hell? And literally about 6 months, I experienced that. Mm-hmm. I mean, man, if that's not a confidence booster, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
So yeah, confidence is a big thing. The way you walk into a room, the energy that you wear,
Yeah.
it's a big thing. But the discipline, I think, was the biggest game changer for me.
So there's a lot that happened within the last few years because I remember when we were talking at 10 Sushi, right, in Irvine, you were talking about how in business, you know, you went from making a couple $100,000 a year to making several millions a year, or at least on that runway. So was it like, so you started your weight loss journey like what, a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
And this is around
2021.
And this is around the same time that you started to also dial it up in business too, right?
Big time.
Was it around the same time?
Well, I mean, I was already kind of building up in my business, and I think part of my personal development and
Was
journey
losing the weight.
was, well, I think leading up to where I was mentally prepared to attack that was I joined a CEO group and started surrounding myself by people I felt inferior to.
Yeah.
And my attitude was, I want to be a small fish surrounded by sharks.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way I'm going to learn to swim, you know, in bigger waters.
Right.
And
I like
so, you know, I made a big financial investment to be a part of this.
How much?
At that time, it felt big at that time, by about $3,500 a month to be a part of this, to travel quarterly, to meet with all these people. And it's something related to my industry, focused on marketing, but also focused on really just taking engineers, and I still had somewhat of an engineer mind, and teaching them how to truly run a business, understand your numbers, understand marketing, the way everything kind of works within a business. And being surrounded by professionals like that, you can't. You show me your friends, and I'll show you who you are, right?
So what was that point though? Because you've been an entrepreneur since you're 40 now, right?
I've been an entrepreneur all my life.
Your whole life. So what was it? And you started really like, you know, this is interesting because a lot of people, you know, there's so many people on the internet saying like, oh, within 3 years I started making $1 million, whatever. But like for you, like you had been making a decent lifestyle for a pretty extended amount of time. And then you chose to get really serious about growing as a person and growing your business, and you just kind of shot up. So I want to know, like, what was that point for you in your life, or that like motivated you to invest in that program, and just take things more seriously than where you were at?
Influence. I had some friends that were crushing it in business.
Yeah.
And I realized I wasn't thinking bigger.
Yeah.
I also realized that with where I wanted to go in business, there were certain things I needed to learn.
Yeah.
And people I needed to be around.
Yeah.
So it really just came down to that. I wanted more. I wasn't dreaming big enough.
Yeah.
You know, I thought that having a business that made $1 million a year was like this mind-blowing idea.
Yeah.
And then I meet a friend who didn't just make $1 million, he netted
$1 million.
line. $1 million. There's a big difference between those two.
Yeah.
And I understood that. And so it showed me what's possible. And it was kind of one of those, well, if that guy could do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what were those things that you started to implement into your life and your business that allowed you to like exponentially increase your revenue within a few years span?
It was learning to not procrastinate and learning to get out of my own way.
Yeah, so in what ways were you getting in your own way?
A lot of it was some emotional intelligence and dealing with stuff inside of me. I went through this program called the MDK Project. Yeah. And it taught me, for those who aren't familiar with the MDK Project, it's run by Beatrice Cooley. It's kind of winding down now. They're only doing one more class. Well, there's one class coming up immediately, then one in October, and then it's closed. No more. So if you want to go through this thing, sign up because it's never going to be here again. But they run you through this 75-hour crucible, and the entire purpose of it comes down to this hunt and destroy. Yeah. Where for men, a lot of times we tend to compartmentalize things. Yeah. So we take some of the most traumatizing, horrible parts of our life and our history and our past that have happened to us, and we stick it in a box and say, I can't or don't want to or don't have time to deal with this. You just shove it away into the back of the attic of your mind, forget it's even there. Yeah. And when I went through this process of being physically, emotionally, spiritually broken down, breaking through walls of these areas that I didn't think were possible, breaking through glass ceilings, and then being brought to such a point of exhaustion that they bring us into a room, they give us a glass of crappy, not even warm coffee, and they put a journal in front of us and have us go through a guided journal thing. And it said, the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life is blank. And what I started writing down, it was the day that my dad went to jail when I was a kid. And this is what happened. Yeah. And so what happened was I wasn't given that rite of passage. Yeah. I wasn't given that entry into manhood. And I'd already felt neglected by my dad all the way growing up in a lot of ways. But throughout my adult life, I've always fought to achieve, to prove to myself that I'm good enough. And MDK was that opportunity to be good enough. Yeah. And so, wrote all this stuff out, cried like a baby trying to express it in front of all the other men that remained and all these instructors that I deeply respected. Yeah. Never cried in front of another man, especially in my adult life. Like, that's just not something you do, right? Yeah. So I go through this and they bring you back outside and they kick your butt. And by the way, the fact that I can express this now without breaking down in tears is such a big deal. Yes. One of the instructors told me afterwards, he said, David, when you talked about this, it was as if it just happened yesterday. And really it had, because when that happened, I didn't know how to process it.
Because you had never processed it.
No. That was the first time I pulled back out of the box. Yeah. So it was heavy. And once I got through MDK, I had realized that...
But you failed it the first time, right?
I did. Yeah, I failed it the first time.
So what was the story behind that?
Prepared. We were on the beach and...
Was that the same time you journaled about your dad?
No, I hadn't gotten to that evolution yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So you felt the
no.
first time in the time
I
when
wasn't
you...
even through 24 hours. I think I was at like hour 18.
Okay.
And man, I mean, I can't express how brutal that MDK is.
It's like Navy SEALs training, basically, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say a civilian and much softer version of it. I have some family that are SEALs, and so I've had enough conversations with people in the SEAL community to understand that MDK is a joke compared to.
Really?
I mean, it's not a joke. It is no joke. But compared to just Hell Week or Buds and the phases in general and the longevity of it, it's what happens in Buds is no joke.
Yeah.
And what happens in MDK in just the general civilian world is no joke.
Yeah.
But there's two very different results. One, you're training warriors to go out there and put their lives on the line, and then the other one, you're developing men and masculinity.
Yeah.
So very different goals.
Yeah.
But and so there's different cadences to it. They're still very difficult in their own ways.
Yeah.
And I would even say the Hunt and Destroy, where it was journaling, that was probably the worst and most difficult evolution. Beat the shit out of me, man. Run me, freeze me, exhaust me, humiliate me, but don't make me look at my emotions. Right? That was my attitude.
Whole other kind of strength.
Yeah, it was hard. But what I found is through releasing that and experiencing that, all of a sudden I walked out of there being like, I'm good enough. And there's this burden lifted off of me. I'm okay. I'm actually proud of myself.
Yeah.
And to go from needing to posture myself and believing I'm not good enough and having to constantly prove myself to me, means that I'm absolutely trying to prove myself to everybody else.
Yeah.
And not carrying that with you, and not caring what other people think, not focusing inwards but focusing outwards. It just changes. So I understood the value of actually addressing and dealing with these deep-seated problems.
But was that it? Like, okay, so you couldn't have just like gone through this like thing and like, okay, like I'm all better, I can go out and crush it. It was probably like you learned a practice and then you continued to deal with more of these things? Or was it really just like, I just needed to deal with this one thing and that was it?
No, it's an addition of multiple things. But there's all these inceptions that drove me to the next stage and drove me to the next stage.
Yeah.
So it's like in 2017 when I joined Robin's thing for the CEO group, I got around these professionals, and that drove me to a level. And then I started reading more and learning my numbers and practicing discipline in business.
Yeah.
And then I started through my reading recognizing it's not healthy that I'm walking around carrying all of this shame, and I hit a critical point with my weight. And then I want to change that. And then through that, I discover MDK, and that drives me more in the story to then I'm dealing with my emotional health, and they teach me about the importance of balancing faith, family, fitness, and finance.
Yeah.
So now I'm pursuing all of these areas and wrapping goals around improving all of them at the same time.
Yeah.
And so you can see how one thing leads to another, leads to another, and leads to another.
Yeah. So it's just like,
And it never stops. You never peak. You're never done.
So when did you do the program, the MGK?
I did that in 2021.
Is that in 2021?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So that's when so in October 2021 is when I failed and I rang the bell.
Yeah.
And I came in fat. I had already been training for a period of time, and I thought that I was ready.
Yeah.
I didn't know what real training looked like, and I was shocked, man. I mean, my legs were cramping, everything was falling apart, but I was just too heavy.
Yeah.
And so what happened was, I grew up here in California. I'm used to the beaches. I surf. I'm familiar with cold water. I'm not afraid of that.
Yeah.
The beach didn't do it to me. Rolling around the sand didn't do it to me. What did it to me was we were doing these carries. We were carrying each other. And because I'm so fat at the time, one of the guy just had a hard time carrying me, and he dropped me, and I landed right on my hip, and I felt this like injury deep inside my hip. Ugh. And I was like, I don't know what to expect, but I'm pretty certain they're going to keep running us pretty damn hard. And if I keep going, I'm going to get an injury that I'm going to live with for a while, if not my whole life.
So what was it?
I don't know. What I do know is I didn't give myself the opportunity to know. I recognize this is a problem.
So it just healed.
Yeah. Well, I came in fat and I came in underprepared. And so I needed to ring the bell. I needed to fail. That was part of my story. It was part of the process of me graduating. I needed to fail. I needed to ring that bell. And I made the decision on the beach. I'm not going to med roll myself. I'm not going to go over to the meds and come up with an excuse so I could come back for free, because I needed this to be pure and I couldn't dilute the experience.
Yeah.
So I rang the bell. I re-upped. They make you pay. It was thousands and thousands of dollars.
Was it like 10 grand or something?
It was 12, and then they gave me a break the second time, so it was another 8. Mm-hmm. So by the grace of God, I was prepared to pay 12, and I don't know what they would do for somebody else.
Yeah.
So if anybody is like, but you said, don't do that. But but the last class is in October anyway. So if you ring the bell in October, you're done. Sorry. So that's a different story. That being said, I knew I'd come back, and I was okay paying that money because I needed to experience the consequences of my decisions.
Yeah.
And I signed up with this fitness program by some of the other guys that already graduated MDK, called Battle Ready. Mm-hmm. And they showed me what real training and fitness and nutrition looked like. And that's when things got serious. And I came back a savage. And pretty much before we even started, in my mind, I had already completed it. I had already flipped that switch.
I've got to reset the camera, but go on. You can talk.
Yeah, I just needed to, just go through the motions at that point.
Okay, so the first time you did it was in...
October 2021.
And when did you do it again?
In April 2022.
Okay, interesting.
So roughly about
2 years ago.
Yeah, just about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It was funny. I was looking through pictures of where I was at. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I was in the best shape of my life. I truly mean I came back a savage.
Yeah.
But I was nowhere near SEAL buds ready. And that's why I can't compare the two. There is no comparison.
So what was that training regimen like between October and April?
It was a lot of calisthenics and a lot of time under tension. So I was training specifically for MDK because you're just going nonstop. Mm-hmm. So just burpees, remaining exhausted, remaining out of breath, being comfortable sweating, being comfortable being in a state of almost failure. Mm-hmm. And my wife, when I rang the bell, she took a screenshot of me ringing the bell because they posted a photo of it. Typically they put like an emoji of like a sad face for like privacy purposes over like when they put up the stories just to hide the person's face so they don't embarrass them. I guess they didn't care with me because they didn't do that. And so it's just a picture of me all fat and sad ringing the bell. And I printed that out and I wrote, "Kill the bitch inside of you. Get used to not ringing the bell." Mm-hmm. And I printed that out on a big piece of paper and I put that in my squat rack in my home to where I looked at that every single day and it pissed me off. So as I'm going through this and I want to compromise on a set, maybe I'll do less. I'm getting tired. This is good enough. I kept saying, you got to get used to not ringing the bell.
Yeah. And then you passed the second time. Mm-hmm. Congratulations on that.
Thanks.
And then I'm curious, like, what was your relationship with your wife like throughout this process?
It wasn't good. We were headed towards divorce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was this, so how does that relate to everything that was going on in your life at that time?
I was emotionally violent.
I can imagine because you have this fire kind of inside you, right? Which is like, you're kind of like mad at yourself. And it's like...
And you take it out on the people around you. Some of the people, unfortunately, the people that you love most, that you're closest to.
Yeah, because some people internalize it, and then some people take it out on other people.
Yeah.
So you one of those people that at least at that time took it out on other people?
I won't say other people.
But maybe on yourself and just fucked up your mood, and then that got other people, like...
No, I think really the problem is I suffered from kind of the nice guy syndrome, where I'd have these unwritten contracts and these unwritten like expectations of the way other people should treat me because I'm so nice.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And it's a problem that a lot of men struggle with. And I read this book called No More Mr. Nice Guy that helped unravel that.
Yeah.
And I was already kind of on that journey of this stuff.
Yeah.
But at that time, I expected my wife to operate too much in the masculine in a lot of ways. In terms of her responsibilities and her duties, and she needs to treat me this way, and what about me, and what about my emotions, and don't I matter? And I failed to understand that in a marriage, the man is the sun.
Yeah.
And the woman is the earth. And the sun doesn't need anything from her. The sun will shine on her.
Yeah.
And she will only shine back at the sun when the sun is shining.
Interesting.
But if the sun isn't shining on her, she's going to be plugged into darkness, and the relationship's going to die.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big problem in our marriage today, is that men are raised a lot of times by women, and predominantly women. We live in a predominantly feministic society.
You were raised by your mom.
I was raised by my mom.
That's interesting, because you strike me as a very masculine man, but even if on the outside you are masculine, there's, I guess, certain behaviors you can have with your wife that are like, hey, like, I want attention, I need emotional support.
Totally.
Maybe I'm busy with my business, I want you to manage these things that maybe normally I would, or...
Well, I'm not going to lead you unless you do this, or it needs to be halfsies, or 50-50, or, you want 50-50? I'm talking to my wife.
Like, what were those things
So I'm going to compromise.
I'm curious.
Man, I mean, let me think about that. It's in the small things. It's in the little day-to-day things. It's honestly, Alec, it's hard to put words to it. It's almost just the energy of the relationship as a whole. I'd come home from a bad day of work and be short and act like an asshole.
Yeah.
And I would just expect her to suck it up and be like, well, what about me? Don't you understand that I've been at work all day, and why can't you just come and take care of me?
Yeah.
Come on, mommy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When she's been home and doing her own level of work and taking care of our two kids.
Yeah.
And I need to walk in and step into a space where I put her first. And I need to first shine on her.
But you'd have a hard day at work and you'd kind of be an ass.
I'd be an asshole, and then I'd expect her to suck it up.
Yeah, that's very similar to my dad growing up. Because he was so, he was like the breadwinner. He worked full time, and he would have bad days at work or be mad at his boss, and he would come home and he'd make everybody feel like shit.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you get out of something what you put into it. And I was talking to a friend today, and he's dealing with some struggles and problems with his wife. And he's like, you know what? He was telling me how he was telling his wife, he's like, I feel like we are just roommates. You do your thing, I do my thing, and I'm holding a lot of resentment for you in this. And I said, so in a previous conversation, I suggested that they develop a non-negotiable date night where he leads it.
Yeah.
He chooses, we're going to go, it's going to be on this day, it's going to be at this time. And it's not, hey, honey, where do you want to go? And it's all about what she wants. Women don't want you to put them in control all the time. A lot of times women just want to be loved and taken care of, and they want to be safe.
Yeah, of course.
And so it's a more traditional view, and I'm not saying that's true for everybody. There's obviously a spectrum of masculinity and femininity across the board, but I'm just saying in general. And for my wife especially, she wants that. And so I said, I asked him about that, and he's like, well, we talked about it. We actually talked about it this morning in our fight after things cooled down a little bit. And I said, we should think about this. Like, I feel like this. What I want you to think about, like, if we should go on a date night or something like that. And I asked him, I was like, if you're going to take a girl on a date, you see a cute girl at the bar or at whatever,
Yeah.
and you approach her, what do you say? Do you say, hey, I want you to think about going on a date with me, and where would you want to go? Like, no,
the whole point is to be
right.
like decisive and say, hey, we're doing this.
Exactly.
That's
like,
the whole point of leading as a man.
Exactly. So
he was being feminine in the way that he approached it.
100%. 100%. In fact, it's so funny. When I asked him that question, he's like, well, actually, I've never actually done that before. I've always waited for girls to approach me. And I made a joke. I was like, okay, well, assuming you're being more masculine,
yeah,
you actually get the balls and you walk up to a girl that you think is pretty and you want to ask her out.
Yeah.
You say, hey, how are you? Strike up a conversation. What are you doing this Saturday?
Yeah.
You picked the day. Mm-hmm. Oh, I can't do it Saturday. Well, it's no problem. How about Wednesday night? Again, you're leading.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go out Wednesday night. Cool. I'll pick you up at 6. Yeah. Great, I'll see you then.
Yeah.
Text each other the address, boom. What was that interaction? She was in her feminine. It's not like he was better than her in any way. He was just leading this, right? Mm-hmm. And she was accepting it. She was in control of accepting it, or saying, get the hell out of here, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So both are in control, but they're playing their different roles.
Yeah.
And the problem is that in our marriages, after we get married, we get this partnership. But then as men, a lot of times we start giving these roles and responsibilities we're supposed to have to our wife. I want you to think about us going on a date night.
Why does that happen?
I think it's easier in a lot of ways. And then when you're in a marriage, it's supposed to be this 50-50. And maybe it is in some way. I would say probably more 51-49. Whoever holds the 1% is the one that goes downstairs with a shotgun when a bad guy comes in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That'd be where that 1% is.
Yeah.
So in terms of value, yes, you're both 50-50. But in terms of masculine and feminine, there's going to be different roles.
Yeah.
Of who does what. When you go out dancing, one person leads, one person follows.
Yeah.
And there's different moves for both.
Yeah.
But if you remove anyone from that equation, you're not dancing with anybody anymore. So yes, they're 50-50, because if you remove one, then you don't have a whole.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you say after marriage, men often develop a more feminine role.
You fall to the level of your training.
Is it because it's comfortable, or like?
I think you just stop having intention behind it.
Yeah.
You get comfortable. You stop thinking, you fall into a groove.
Yeah. So now how this relates to the whole MGK project, all that. So it's like you're in a stage where you had this, like, you didn't want to be a fat ass. You had some sort of bitterness, something that you wanted to prove to yourself. Mm-hmm. And at that time, you were maybe not as present for your family as you wanted to be, and also were maybe leaning on more emotional support from your wife.
I mean, yeah. I would say it was a big problem throughout the entire course of our marriage.
Yeah.
And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. At first, when I first got married to Ruby, she was my biggest fan.
Yeah.
A friend of mine had said, I've never met anybody as into somebody as your wife is into you.
Yeah.
And around maybe like year 5 or 6, something switched in her to where I put her into a position of feeling like she needed to protect herself from me because of my behavior.
Yeah.
Because of me just not being the present man that I need to be.
Yeah.
She got defensive.
Yeah.
And things changed, and our conversations changed.
So how did things ultimately change for the better, though?
I realized that's all my fault.
And what stage was that in? Was that in 2022?
Yeah, I would say probably late 2022. We were going to marriage counseling, and we were seeing this woman.
So this is after you passed MGK?
It was after I passed MDK.
Uh-huh.
Actually, no, we were going to marriage counseling before, and we were seeing this woman, and I'd gone through MDK, And I came back, and I'll never forget this because it was so funny. Because the dynamics were very different, where I'm sitting on one side of the couch, and I just felt like it was her, my wife, and this female counselor. And it was just this, like, okay, Ruby, time to complain about David. All right, David, let's fix you. And that's how they felt. And I just hated it. And because of MDK, but also just through the influences and the conversations and my change in thought process and
just through being around the right people, 100%, that sort of thing. Yeah.
And reading different books and having different conversations.
Yeah. So it wasn't one thing.
No,
it was a lot
of
different things.
A lot of things coming together.
Yeah.
I had this realization that Ruby is being the way she is 100% because of me.
Yeah.
And I needed to adjust things. So I can't even remember. I can't tell you what the conversation was about. But the counselor was actually trying to get Ruby to apologize to me about something. And I had to stop her. And I was like, okay, I don't want to hear your apology. And it's not that I don't want to hear your apology, like you need to be sorry or...
Yeah.
It's that you have nothing to apologize about.
Yeah.
The reason we are here today is 100% because of me.
Yeah.
I've been giving you a specific experience that has conditioned you to not trust me, to not listen to me, to not want to follow me. I haven't been a good leader. Mm-hmm. And I owe you an apology.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I look at the counselor and she's just like jaw dropped on the floor, like, well, I lost a client. It's like he figured it out.
Yeah.
She's like, who are you?
Yeah.
It was a cool experience, but I would say that was really the beginning of, and our marriage still has its rocks that we got to work out, but we're in such a better place.
Yeah.
We're not headed towards divorce anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, we were just right there. And it's like now she trusts my leadership. She listens to me. She values my opinion. She's willing to listen to my criticisms about her and receive them, because I keep enforcing this idea that we're not two opposing forces fighting each other.
Yeah.
It's not us against each other.
Yeah, we're on the same team.
We're shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah.
And we are fighting even in the midst of an argument. We are not against each other. We are against other forces that are fighting to take down our marriage.
Yeah.
And so it's us against these forces. Let's recognize who the true enemy is, and let's not have friendly fire.
Yeah.
So I keep instilling in her, I'm for us. We are a team. I am your advocate.
Yeah.
I'm here to protect you. I'm here to defend you. I am not here to humiliate you. Mm-hmm. I'm not here to prove you wrong. And I'm not interested in being right while leaving my best friend feeling like an ass.
Yeah.
Or feeling humiliated.
Yeah, because when you win an argument, nobody really wins.
No, that's not the point. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to say I'm perfect at that. I still fail. God, do I fail. But I'm getting better at it.
Yeah.
And I'm winning that trust and respect from my wife.
Yeah.
She's starting to be that woman that I first had within the first part of our marriage.
Yeah.
And that's what I want.
Absolutely.
That's what every man wants.
So I want to know, what was, throughout this whole process, like, what's your relationship been with, like, faith and God and that whole connectedness?
It's been healing.
Yeah. So prior to all this happening, like, what was your relationship with God, let's say, like, 5 years ago, versus, like, what it was like along this journey of this exponential growth you've had in all areas of your life?
Yeah.
Marriage, fitness, finances, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I feel like we're kind of hitting each pillar, right? We've hit fitness, family. Now we're hitting faith, right?
Yeah.
So my relationship with God has been a very real relationship through the course of my life.
Yeah.
And real relationships, they have their ups and downs, and definitely hit some pretty low downs around that time, especially like 2015-ish. to about 20, like through COVID. By the time like COVID hit, like 2020, it's not that I didn't want to have anything to do with God. I just, when COVID hit, I got an excuse to step down from everything. I was leading worship in church. I was committed, I was in a country band. I was, just everywhere, committed to everything all the time. And I was never home. And that was actually a big problem in our marriage. In that time, she's like, you're never here.
Yeah.
You're not taking care of your kids. You're not taking care of me. And I'm not going to get into that. I could talk for hours about that, and I don't want to. But what I can say is that COVID gave me permission to, it was probably one of the best things that's ever happened to me. Obviously not for everybody, but socially speaking, it gave me permission to not be a part of anything. I never had so much free time in my life. And man, the greatest vacation in the world. It was spectacular. And I would say that was a big part of what helped our marriage as well.
Yeah.
Is that I wasn't good at saying no to anything. I didn't want to disappoint anybody. I didn't want to let anybody down because I didn't want to show weakness. I wanted to be everything to everybody. During that time when I was trying to prove myself to everybody, including myself. But one thing that took me out of was church. And I'm going to say that was probably a healthy thing that I needed to separate myself, maybe not so much from God, but from people at church, because it was becoming a toxic relationship.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. But through kind of the late 2010 to 2020-ish, God stopped being who God was in my life and became more of an occupation and kind of an obligation to the church, if you will. And I stopped having these real deep conversations with him and pursuing him, and having that relationship with him. As I took that break from church and, really took that break from God. I wasn't really talking to him. I wasn't reading the Bible. I wasn't having any type of real conversations around God. It just, wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
It allowed me to kind of detox a little bit. And I guess God and I took a break.
Yeah.
And it's funny you bring that up because just last night, I was having a conversation with a friend, and I was telling them, you know what, for the first time in a long time, I actually am excited to pursue my relationship with God. I'm reading a couple of books that are more spiritually and faith-based in terms of our marriage. And I want to lead my family, lead my wife, and lead my kids in a godly manner. I want my kids to grow up knowing who God is, and more importantly, as the person, as the man who's responsible for leading my home. I want my kids to, I'm their pastor. They're my ministry. So it's my responsibility beyond serving in church, beyond being Christian to the rest of the world. But the biggest benefit that's come from it is that I learned that I don't actually really identify as a Christian anymore. I feel like that word's lost its meaning socially. It means you tell 10 people you're a Christian, they're going to assume 10 different things. One person's going to say, oh, you hate gay people. Oh, you are a racist. Oh, of course, you're a Christian white male, whatever, right? To another person, oh, you're such a wonderful person. And then to another person, they're going to be like, oh, what kind of Christian are you? What flavor Christian? Are you a Baptist? Are you a this? Are you a Mormon? Or are you Chinese? I'm not saying Chinese people are Christian, obviously, but you get my point. It's like, it means everything to everybody. And if it means everything to everybody, then it means nothing. And so I've removed the word Christian from my identity, if you will. And instead, I believe that the Bible is the written word of God. I've done my research into it, deep research into it. And it's just, statistically speaking, I don't have, when you really understand how improbably impossible that book is to exist, I don't really have the faith to not believe that that's the word of God.
Yeah.
I think that atheists are probably, they have some of the most deep and they have more faith than I do. That's for sure. Because when I look at the facts of things, when I've done my research, I'm like, everything points to an intelligent creator, and it points to God. And when you look at the Bible, it points to being relevant. So with that being my foundation, if anything, a friend of mine in high school coined the phrase, I'm a Babylonian. In other words, I read what's in the Bible.
Yeah.
And I believe what's in the Bible, and not for what I think it is, but for what it says. Have you ever heard the term exegesis versus eisegesis?
No.
So forget about the word Jesus being in there, because Jesus has nothing to do with it. It just happens to have that in there. But exegesis is the idea of approaching a written word or just approaching something. It could be a movie, it could be a book, it could be whatever, right? And it's like, I have an idea and I want this thing to back it up. So like lawyers do that a lot with the law.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I need to prove that you're innocent. And so I'm going to figure out how to manipulate what the law is saying to back my argument. Eisegesis is where you read it for what it says and you extract meaning from it. So whenever I'm reading the Bible, what I'm always seeking to do is to not let what somebody else has told me, what I've heard on church on Sunday, any exterior, even my own ideas of what I want it to say and believe, I try to put all that out and I just read it and extract what it's saying.
Yeah. So it's like your own interpretation of it, basically.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't want to just say that I'm owning it, because I mean, anybody can read the book and they're going to pull different things from it. Yeah. I mean, that's how cults are started, right? Yeah. But when you really read it in context to itself, in fact, I think that really the reason why cults are started is because they have these ideas and they start pulling bits and pieces from it. But you really have to understand the Bible as a whole and understand that it is in context to itself. And it really doesn't contradict itself. Yeah. And so, but if you only take a snapshot of something, like imagine that you were in the forest and all you did is you could only see one tree. Yeah. Right. And so then you say, like, you're looking at this oak tree, but that's all you see is that oak tree. Yeah. Then you could tell people, based off of what I'm seeing right here, forests are all oak trees. Yeah. Right. But when you zoom out, you see that it's a forest and it's a lot more complicated than that. Yeah. And I'm oversimplifying things. But I believe that anybody can approach the Bible, and if they read it in context to itself with a eisegesis-based approach, they're going to come to some very, very important and specific, inescapable conclusions. Yeah. That God is who he says he is, that Jesus was God, that the Trinity is a real thing. No, the word Trinity is not in the Bible. It's just an idea to explain, a truth of things. But you have to look at it in context to itself, all the way from Genesis to the end. Yeah. To come to that conclusion. So yeah, I guess that's my religion, if you will. I'm a Babylonian. Yeah. Good. It was fun. I'm having a good time. What do you think? No, I think it's good, man. What do you think of what I'm saying? You've been asking me a lot of questions. Love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I've been practicing my faith deeper over the last several months, and I just feel like that connectedness is really important. I've been reading this book called, I've read it over many times over the years, or months, called The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale.
It's a good book.
Yeah, and it's just like, it talks a lot about God and the importance of faith, but it doesn't directly mention the Bible in any certain point, which I think is interesting, because when I started practicing more of my faith, is kind of a fresh perspective, which is, I'd read the Bible, not really understand it. Hey, there's all these stories, blah, blah, blah. But this gave me like a different way of kind of looking at it too, which is like the Bible aside, like let's just talk about faith,
Yes.
right? So that gave me a much more practical approach, and especially looking at like an interesting point in that book is like acting as if God is your business partner. Because at least in my life, like I just look at like, shoot, like I'm around a lot of people, I'm doing a lot of things, but at the end of the day, it's just me in this apartment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't have any co-founders. I don't have a significant other or something like that yet. So it's just been like that, having God more in my life has provided that sense of like someone else is there, like I'm working with this person. And through that, just through faith alone, I've been a lot more interested in the Bible as a whole and learning more about the teachings and the lessons that are learned from that and how I can apply that to my own life. But yeah, really how it started for me, or kind of like my daily practice right now, is I watched this, I think it was a couple months ago, I watched this YouTube video, and it was super interesting. It talked about like, how do you like, what's like a good practical way to talk to God?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, let's pretend I'm sitting right here. Step one is like, there's like 3 parts to it. One is like, see that person, like feel that person in the room. It's like somebody is there. Step one, right?
Yeah.
Something is in the room. You're not alone. They're there. And then the second part is talk to God as if you would talk to anybody else.
Yes.
It's not like there's some like way to say a prayer. We're not like talking in tongues or anything.
Old English.
Yeah.
Lord, thee, thou, thy. Yeah.
No, it's just like
Just be real.
Yeah, just be real and talk to God like, as if you were having a conversation with another human being, kind of just talking out loud. And the third component of that is this trust, which is this trust that God is there, God is taking care of me, all that kind of stuff. And in the video, it has like this, it's such a good video, but it has this guy walking on the floor of the ocean. Okay. And he's wearing this oxygen tank thing, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Uh-huh.
And like, there's somebody floating on a boat above with the air tube.
Yeah.
Right? And just like trust, that sense of trust that like God is holding that air tube.
And he's not going to pinch it off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
While you're walking on the floor of this ocean, right?
Totally.
So it's, so I've been taking it more seriously, and just like, it's so interesting because everybody that I talk to that has had a lot of success in a lot of different areas of their life, or some of the more complete people that I know, they have a strong relationship with God. And I feel like it's an interesting time in the internet because everybody wants to follow God, and to whatever extent, like, doesn't have to necessarily even be Christianity. It could be like your version of it, right?
Sure.
But like, I feel like God is kind of a taboo topic in some sense. As in, I don't see a lot of people talking about it. People might think they might offend people with religion by talking about it, whatever. But at the end of the day, like, everybody has a connection with a higher power that's really successful, or they want to have more of a connection with so it's like, really, you're never alienating anybody by talking about God.
There's a lot of, it's a complicated topic.
Yeah.
There's a lot of negative interests that people have. A lot of people blame God for the negativity in their life.
Yeah.
A lot of people, there's been a lot of, especially just American Christian culture as a whole, has developed a lot of, I call them Christian assholes, where they just shit on everyone. And so they associate those people and say, if that's God, I want nothing to do with it. And you want to know something? I don't blame them.
Yeah.
If that was God. But the good news is that it's not.
What is it?
God is love.
Yeah.
And not the whole love is love, but God is the purest form of love.
Yeah.
So
then it's like, let's say there's bad circumstances. Something happens in somebody's life. This is a really difficult question, but it's like, if God is love, why does
Why
God
does he allow bad things to happen?
Yeah.
It's a good question, and it's not the easiest question to answer.
Yeah.
But I've asked it enough times to where I think that I've landed on something that makes enough sense for me.
Yeah.
Is in order to love somebody, and I think I could speak into this a little bit deeper now that I'm a dad.
Yeah.
Right? If you love somebody, if you love your kid,
Yeah.
you have to let them experience the consequences of their own decision. You have to give them free will. If you control everything,
Yeah.
if a lion in a cage isn't free, they're safe. Not a whole lot of bad things are going to happen to them,
Yeah.
but that lion is not happy.
So you think it's all karma?
No, I mean, karma, maybe it's just more so life is life. And you know, when you're born on this earth, you became immediately eligible to die.
Yeah.
And shit happens.
Yeah.
Terrible things, unspeakable horrors happen. Bad people do bad things.
Yeah.
And good people a lot of times don't do enough to prevent people from doing bad things. And good people do bad things. And some of the best people that you know are capable of doing the worst things. I've personally experienced that.
Yeah.
Where one of the people that I've looked up to my entire life, in an instant, he murdered his 2 children.
Wow.
He's in jail now. It's heartbreaking. But somebody who I thought so highly of, we are all capable of becoming the worst person we've ever. And why is that? It's because we have free will.
Yeah.
Now, did God do that? And yes, God could step in and stop things from happening. Sometimes he does. But if he is taking his lions and putting them in cages, saying, everybody's safe, here's your bubbles, nothing bad will ever happen. Yes, we would lose the bad, but we would also lose so much of the good. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
It's just the nature of this existence that we're in. It didn't mean God caused it. Didn't mean he let it happen or didn't. And I think the silliest one is everybody dies. And I could die on the way home. A meteor could fall on us right now.
Yeah.
Anything could happen.
Yeah.
You don't know. Freak accidents. But the bottom line is that none of us know how we're going to go, but we're going to go. And the people that we love are going to die. My kids could die tonight. I don't know.
Yeah.
I never know. And you obviously don't want to just dwell on that, but let's just say, God forbid that I go home and some bad guy, while I'm here talking with you, and yes, I think about this stuff on a regular basis because, I have a dark soul, I guess, and I hope that this stuff never happens, but I'm terrified every time that my wife leaves with our kids and I get a call from her. My first thought is, I hope my kids aren't dead. I swear to God, it's like my biggest fear. But I'll tell you one thing that will not happen is if something like that did happen, I wouldn't blame God. Because what I know, and what all of us know, is that every single one of us on this planet, every single person who breathes air right now will die.
Yeah.
And that's not God's fault. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, we're programmed to blame other people, person, places, and things. And God's a low-hanging fruit. It just is what it is.
It's just like a result of free will.
It's a result of free will. I was deeply hurt by people in church.
Yeah.
And in church I still attend to and serve at today, where most people would leave. And the reason why I haven't left, and the reason why I still associate with those people, and the reason why I didn't abandon, I needed to kind of detox from it, take a step back. But there was never a moment where I blamed God, and there was never a moment where I said Christians are assholes and I'm out.
Yeah.
Because I knew that people make mistakes, or people and organizations make really shitty mistakes.
Yeah.
And we're human, and that's why we need church, and we really need God to be a part of church. Mm-hmm. It's broken people leading broken people, and when the people that are followers need to give grace, and then the people who are leading need to give grace.
That's such an interesting way of looking at it. Broken people are leading broken people.
Yeah. It is what it is.
Yeah. Now this is deep, man. So I want to shift the conversation a little bit towards entrepreneurship because I want to shift the conversation a little towards entrepreneurship because you have been, from what I know, pretty dang successful over the last couple of years, in what you've been doing.
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, I think the term successful is relative, but
You've accomplished more than most.
I would say so. That's a fair statement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to know, and even like a few years ago, you were making a lot less money, right? So your company, how much in revenue did you do in 2023?
Last year we did 2.5 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did 2.5.
And how much did you do the year before?
1.8.
And what did you do the year before?
One.
The year before?
I think it was 784.
And then the year before?
I can't remember, but I know in 2015 we were at 232,000.
Yeah.
We have averaged roughly a 40% growth year over year.
Yeah.
And this year we're in line to do about 3.5, possibly 4.
Yeah.
If I continue with the current trajectory of growth.
So, I've had a lot of conversations. Hey, how do you do that? You hire great people, you have systems. Yeah. I'm more curious about, like, throughout this process over the last, couple of years, how have you been leading yourself?
With kind of just everything we've been talking about.
Yeah.
I have noticed that your business doesn't improve until you do.
Yeah.
And that's just a fact. When you grow your capacity and understanding and the paradigms that you do grow, the things that you do change.
Yeah.
When you grow, the things that you do change. And David Shay making $234,000, my job description and the things I was doing day to day look very different from today.
Yeah.
Back then, I was in operations. I was one of the computer techs. I was running projects. I was managing those things.
Yeah.
And so I was still operating as a singular tech that was making singular money with my time, and I wasn't multiplying myself.
Yeah.
Now, I never go on site to serve anybody on computers. I have a much larger team of people. I have divisions of people. So I got a project division. I have a help desk division. I have an incident division. These different genres of support that I'm building up to meet these things. I have an inside marketing team. I have inside sales. I'm still handling all the external sales.
Yeah.
But the book 10X is easier than 2X talks about this. And it says that in order for you to 10X yourself, you have to look at what is the 20% of what I'm doing today that's producing 80% of the results I want.
Yeah.
So then what is that 80% that's only producing the 20% results?
Yeah.
I need to get rid of that. I either need to stop doing it completely, or I need to hire somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
And I need to take that 20% and I need to turn that into 100%.
Yeah.
But and the faster you can do that, the faster you can get rid of that 80%, the faster you're going to 10X yourself into that new level and echelon of business and finance and really any area of your life that you're focusing on, because you can apply that principle across the board. But then the fallacy of it is that the second you 10X yourself, and this is why I said earlier, you never peak and you're always growing, is you've reached that next level. Congratulations, you're there. But now what's next? And you apply it again. What's the 20% that is creating 80% of what I want? And then what's the 80% that I either need to stop doing or I need to give it away?
Yeah.
And you just do it over and over and over again. So throughout the course of this professional growth that I've had, I'm always trying to fire myself. That's my number one job description, professional firer of David Shay.
So you're trying to remove roles that you've been doing and replace them with other people.
Correct. What are the things that I need to stop doing today?
Yeah.
All very important things, And that's where the systems and processes and the yada, yada, yada come from.
Yeah.
Because you got to duplicate yourself. It's not like you just, like, I can't stop billing. I hate billing. I'm still in charge of doing like the monthly billing. I need to give that away. Yeah. I've been giving away pieces of that to my internal team, and I'm ramping up. I need to hire an internal controller and kind of internal just person to handle all the money of my business. I need to get away from that.
Yeah.
It's taken time. Well, actually, it's not taking away time. It's actually super important, and I hate doing it, and so I avoid doing it, but it's got to get done, because if we're not bringing our money, we're not in business, right? And I'm not giving it the attention it deserves, but the attention that I am giving to it is stuff I shouldn't be doing anyways. So that is my next area of firing myself. Because I should be fired because I'm doing a shitty job and I'm not qualified for it, and I hate doing it. So why on earth would you want an employee to have a job like that? You know? So, and that's the way you got to look at it. Is start with the things you hate doing. And give that to somebody else. Like if you hate video editing, you know, with this kind of thing, then don't do it. You know, if what we're doing right now and producing this content, which I'm really enjoying this, by the way, is what's producing 80%, then how dare you spend even an ounce of time editing it, especially if you hate doing it. I'm just using that as an example. I don't know if maybe you love doing it, but maybe you love doing it, but that's not producing the 80% of the results. So even though you love doing it, do that on your free time. Do it because you enjoy it, but for seeking to elevate your business in that specific goal, you got to give it away.
So basically make a list of every single task.
Yes.
And think about what is actually driving the results. And even deeper than like podcasts. It's like, well, within the podcast, there's like 5 to 10 different things. There's the filming, there's the editing, there's the posting it. Where am I actually making my money? Well, it'd be the impact that the podcast has. It'd be me interviewing. So what are all these other spots? And I could look at this from like literally every element of my business, even like an event that I would do, right?
100%.
So many different things. Like, where do I ultimately like make the money? It's like that pitch on stage. Like it's about nailing that pitch and getting the strategy sessions and all of that.
So how do you do that more?
Well, it's like you give all these other things that occupy my mind the day of the event. It's like, well, I'm going to have the assistant take care of the food and the venue taking care of the sound system. I don't want to run around, so I can just focus on that key part. So that's interesting.
The book opens up with this brilliant mind shift. It just rocked my world. It said, pick a goal, whatever that goal is, like a monetary goal. So this goal, this year, I'm going to make $1 million, right? Let's just keep it simple. $1 million, right? Okay, now 10x that goal. Okay, I'm gonna make $10 million. All right, does that feel possible? No. Well, what would have to be true in order for it to feel possible? So maybe for you to do $10 million, you would need to be selling from stage about twice a day, every day, for at least 4 months out of the year to develop statistically, if you knew your numbers, the amount of clients you would need to pull in that revenue. You work your way backwards. How much am I making out of a client? I got this client from this. So out of this, I get this many leads, which converts to this many meetings, which converts to one client. That makes me this much money. Now you just multiply that, and then you figure out, all right, well, then I would have to do these events X amount of times in order to do that. Well, but that'd be impossible, right? How are you going to be able to be on stage but still do everything else you need to do? Well, we want to make $10 million, right? So that means that you need to, what would have to be true in order for you to accomplish that? Well, you'd have to have a team behind you that is making all those other things true. And maybe you don't have the funding and you can't just snap your fingers and get right there immediately, but at least you know where you need to go.
You can make some adjustments.
So maybe you start with hiring a VA, a virtual assistant, and you start giving stuff to them, and just developing that, and you become a professional firer of Alec Mountain.
No, I like that advice a lot. So that's the strategy element, which I think is super important. I'm just wondering, like, what are the certain ways that could have been emotional that you used to get in your own way that prevented you from making money that like is non-existent in your life now?
I've been actively learning how to be a better leader and communicator.
Yeah.
And I've been practicing extreme ownership a lot more.
Yeah. And what does that look like on any given day? Is it just taking ownership of everything that's happening, whether good or bad, or?
Yeah. I mean, the bottom line is that if you don't make something your fault, then it means that you're powerless to change it. So
Yeah.
something that maybe isn't your fault. You're driving a car and you're going through your green, you're behaving all the lights, you're waving at people, you're not flipping people off, whatever, right? But you're there and you're driving. Bam, somebody hits you. Somebody ran red light, they were drunk, they smashed into you.
Yeah.
And you got hit. Well, first of all, I don't care if it's your fault or not. This is something they taught us in motorcycle school. You're still the one that got hit.
Yeah.
You're still the one messed up, right?
Yeah.
So if you just leave it at that, the insurance company says it's not my fault. Oh, my neck. And your neck's still messed up.
Yeah.
You don't want that to happen again. So do an after action report in the AAR. How can I make this my fault? What could I do different to ensure that I'm not going to get hit? Well, I can look both ways before I cross.
Yeah.
At least just really quickly, I can notice the cars that are coming this way.
Yeah.
Notice there's a guy going, "Hurrah!" Right? So make it your fault. It was my fault. I didn't see him. Now, I mean, that could be an unreasonable thing, and there's tragic things that happen. For instance, you and me are here, and somebody could break in and kill my wife and kids, kind of thing. Going back to that super dark space, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the bottom line is that I'm here, and it's not like I could just always be home, right? So you can't operate in fear of not living your life.
But it's like when you can't, because there's a lot more
Right.
parts of our life that we're in control of compared to what we're not.
Totally. And the reason I bring up extremes is because what's true in the extreme is true in the normal. It's just easier to see principles in an extreme setting.
Yeah.
So that's why I go there. It drives my wife crazy.
Yeah.
But I think what I'm trying to say is that with the extreme ownership side of it is if you can make something your fault, it means that you have the power to change it.
Yeah.
But you only have control over yourself. So if you're going to change your outside circumstances and you only have control over yourself, if it's not your fault, then you don't have control over it.
Yeah. No, I like that.
It has nothing to do with right or wrong or, a lot of people are so afraid. It's not my fault.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A couple more questions.
Yeah.
One of my favorite questions I always like to ask is, what's one of the hardest things that's ever happened to you that turned out to be the greatest blessing?
My dad leaving and going to prison.
Yeah.
Because I was the last person to see him before going off to prison. And so in that MDK journaling session, the first one said the worst thing that ever happened to me. What happened? We've talked about that.
Yeah.
What I didn't tell you is that later on, after beating the crap out of us for hours and hours to come, the next night, they bring us in middle of the night. We don't know what time it is. We're not allowed to have watches. It's pretty disorienting. But they bring us back in. We do another journaling session. And it says, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you? And what happened? But then twists it. And it says, and how has that made you better? So it takes the worst thing that's ever happened to you and it turns it into your superpower.
Yeah. Similar.
And so he gave me the keys. And one thing I forgot is he said, take care of the family. What I failed to understand in that moment was that was my rite of passage. That was my rite of passage.
Yeah.
That was him saying, you're good enough.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Dang. So at that point, you had the approval of your dad. Do you feel like you had the approval of your dad at that time?
Well, he didn't tell my older brother that. He didn't say, here's the keys, take it to the family. He didn't tell my younger siblings.
The house keys?
The keys to his van that he had. It was like the last available possession that wasn't in storage.
Yeah.
He gave it to me. And I mean, the keys is kind of a metaphor.
Yeah.
But it was take care of the family.
Yeah. So he chose you.
Yeah.
Out of any of your other siblings.
Yeah.
Jeez. And was it at that point when you were journaling that you realized that?
Yeah. And the crazy thing was, I didn't remember any of this.
Yeah.
This was not a thought that I'd ever, I didn't even remember that situation.
Yeah.
I had packed it so far into the deepest parts of myself.
Yeah.
That only through that experience, when that question was asked to me, that I remembered any of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's powerful, man. I'm speechless.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last question. Let's say it's the end of your life. You're on your deathbed. It could be 1 year from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now. You get to leave the world with three things. Three things that you know to be true about the world around you. What are they?
I get to leave this world?
You get to leave the world with three things you know to be true.
That they believe true about me.
No.
I'll
repeat it. So let's say it's the end of your life.
Okay.
And you have a megaphone where you can talk to the world.
Okay.
And you can share three things that you know to be true about the world around you.
I get to leave these three pieces of wisdom.
Yes. You can think about it.
Yeah. I would say the first one is don't be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes are the greatest teachers in the world. Mm-hmm. And if you're not failing, you're never going to be successful.
Yeah.
So that'd be my first one. The second one is no one's going to care about how much money you made. No one's going to care about what car you drove. Mm-hmm. No one's going to care about your accomplishments. No one's going to care if I become a fucking male model.
Yeah.
I don't even care if I do. I only picked that because I think it'd just be kind of funny to say, and especially if it was true.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? I like absurdity, and I think that'd be absurd. It cracked me up. But nobody's going to care about that stuff. I think what somebody would more so care about is your spirit and your heart and how you made them feel when you're around them.
Yeah.
You know? So focus more on that. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with being successful. There's nothing wrong with money. There's nothing wrong with the pursuit of excellence. And if you want to be a multi-billionaire, go for it. Mm-hmm. If that's the life you see for yourself, there's nothing wrong with any of that. But nobody's going to care about that.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to pursue those things, pursue them. Pursue them with your whole heart. But don't forget about what's most important, which is your family and the people that God's given you around you. Yeah. And serving and honoring them.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is make sure to have fun. And remember, you only get to have one death story. And when you're stuck in eternity and everybody asks you how you're going to die, you know, make sure to have like a really cool story. Yeah. Because you only get one. You got to talk about it forever, right? It's almost like heaven or whatever. It's like prison in the sense that the number of questions, how'd you get in? Yeah. I mean, my vision is, all right, everybody gather around. I got a story for you. Yeah. It's like, so there's this midget and I'm naked. Yeah. We're about to go skydiving, but I don't want to. He's like, okay, you had me a midget. Yeah. I'm not saying I want to. I'm just saying, like, you know, live your life in such a way that when you die, you can't help but have like a really cool death story. Yeah. It's the only sure thing we got in our life is that we're going to die. Might as well make it something awesome. Yeah. Have fun doing it. Mm-hmm.
I love it, man. Well, cool.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, dude.
I love it, man. This is super fun.
Yeah, this was like probably I think it's one of my favorite conversations that I've had on this podcast, honestly. Yeah.